Hi there, my name's Chris. I've been teaching game development and design for over 20 years now, quite a bit of time. Also developed quite a few games. I have my own game development studio, indie development studio called Tiger Games. I want to talk about a few things around game design today. So I guess the first question I'll put out there is, what is game design? So I see quite a lot of situations where you'll see a video, so on YouTube or something, talking about, hey, this is about game design, and you go and have a look at it. And what it really is about is how to build a certain thing in a game engine, or to do something like that. And to me, that's not really what I would necessarily say is the essence of game design. Anyway, so asking this question, well, what is game design? Just sort of brings up other questions. So also, what are game designers designing? Good question. And even a maybe more tricky question is, what is a game? We're not going to go into that. Not going to go into that rabbit hole, but we will talk about a few things. Now, I have to put some caveats up there to begin with. My personal focus is on certainly digital games, and also 3D digital games, and also first person and third person digital games. So if you are someone who is interested in, say, 2D digital games, or 3D top-down digital games, or maybe even you like designing and developing board games, some of this may well be relevant to you, but please be aware, my my focus here is on 3D first person and third person video games. So what is a game? Well, let's think about it as sort of in its essence. So the game contains, well, we have, first of all, we can think about software. And I think for a long time, certainly when I first started in the sort of games area, I think the IT and software development mindset, if I could say it, dominated. So certainly, the 90s, the 2000s, when you talk about digital games, programming was a very big part of that. And in fact, I taught myself to program way back when I was in year 10, when I was 15. So I could actually make games myself, a long time ago. So for a long time, the idea of games being software really did dominate. And you're talking about things like the game engine now. Now we actually have access to professional level game engines with the Unreal Engine and Unity, which is just amazing. So that's really changed things a lot. I think maybe that's why we think games less of software now, because a lot of the software is already there and done. But also there's the specific game code, which goes on top of the game engine there as well. So we can think of games as software, and this is less so these days. Another one is gameplay / mechanics. So we're talking about the challenges within the game, and the player abilities, so the things the player can do to actually overcome those challenges. There's also the story, and then there's also art. So we've got the visual art style, we've got the music art style. So we could say, in one sense, game design, or video game design, digital game design, could be said to be all of this. I mean, in a way, software is important, the gameplay is certainly important, the story is going to be important, and the art is all important. So, yep, we could say that game design is all of the above. But let's think for the player, the relationship between the player and the game. In fact, ask yourself this question: when you talk about, so let's think about your favorite game. What is your favorite game? What do you like playing? So think about that game, and think about how you would describe that game to somebody else, to a friend, perhaps someone else who also plays games but has never played this game. What sort of things do you use to describe that game? How do you describe it? What sort of words do you use? Fun, engaging, exciting, exhilarating. You might describe the things you went through, what you experienced, the art style, the feelings you had maybe when you were going through that game. So players play and interact with our games, and they have what we call a player experience. So this is an important thing to think about. We talked before about what a game is, and it is all those things that we spoke about. So it is software, it is art, it is story, it's gameplay, it is all of those things. But at the end of the day, to our player, the game is basically, when we frame it from the perspective of our player, the game is the experience that they have. Now, if they have an engaging experience, that they I like to use the term engaging. I don't use the term fun because sometimes games are not fun but still engaging. I think of a game Rust here. it's definitely engaging, but sometimes it's not much fun. But the experience, if the experience is engaging, if it draws the player in, then that's a successful game. So we should be thinking about player experiences when we design our games. That's what makes a game successful, a successful player experience. We can also think of these player experiences in a number of different categories here, a number of different lenses. So number one, we've got emotion. A game can be seen as an emotional experience or partly as an emotional experience. So you might have fear, excitement, dread, joy, all these different things. We can also look at a game as a mental state, mind, a mental state. These are things like flow. So when you get into a particular state, when you almost become one with the game, when you get to a particular level of mastery and difficulty, there's that challenge versus mastery thing, and when you get into that, you can actually become one with the game. So that's the mental state. There's also meaningfulness. Games have meaning. Even just, you can think of games like chess or checkers, or games that really are very sort of bare-boned gameplay. They still can have an element of meaningfulness there. So the meaningfulness, certainly the story fits into the meaningfulness area. The art and everything may also relate to meaningfulness, but so can the gameplay. So particularly when it's framed using the art and the story, and then you get your player to carry out a particular action, that can in itself create a really powerful connection in meaning with the player. Number four there, we've got social interaction. So we're talking specifically about multiplayer games there. Very important element there if you've got multiplayer games, so social interaction is an important one. And then the final one there, number five, is time and space. So the perception of time and space there, which is quite important from the player experience there as well. So all those things, are really, we need to think about, when we're designing our game. These are the things that we should be thinking about. So the player only cares, really, just to reiterate this, the player only cares about the experience they are having. They don't care about how amazing your code was. They don't care about the incredible process you went through to come up with the art and the gameplay and what have you. You can tick all the boxes. You can tick all the boxes you like. You can get everything, other game developers and say, oh, you've done it so well. If they don't have a good experience, then they don't care. They're not coming back. They're not going to be giving you good reviews. They're not going to be getting their players to buy your game as well. So the player experience is fundamental. And let me say, there can be, there are deeply flawed games out there that players keep coming back to. One personal experience is 7 Days to Die. It's I would say it's definitely improving. Version 1.1's come out recently. But that game certainly has had some very significant flaws in the past, but the experience has kept players coming back again and again. It was released in 2013. It's now 2025, so it's like 12 years old. It's still going strong. And version 2.0 is coming out soon. So the player experience, whether the game doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to have something that the player cares about, and the player experience is paramount. So one thing we can say is game designers design primarily player experiences. This is what I say here. So as a designer, you might have a game idea. Primarily, your game designer is designing a player experience, or a set of player experiences to think about as well. So within a game, you're going to have multiple player experiences. So this is an interesting situation. So we're talking, so that the main thing that we're doing as game designers is not designing software. It's not necessarily designing art. It's not designing music. It's not designing gameplay. Gameplay is one that I've seen a lot. You know, there are a lot of people out there who seem to think that game design is just about designing gameplay. It's part of it, but really at the end of the day, it's the player experience that the player cares about. So, but there is a but there. The game is actually built by the development team. So the designer can have this amazing vision for a game, and certainly, you know, I talk about this with my students, and a lot of them have this. They have a vision in their mind. They have this vision of the game they want. So we can frame that in terms of player experiences. But think about our development team. You know, who are the people we've got on our development team? We have programmers. Okay, programmers. We have artists. We potentially have level designers. We may have musicians. And we have sound designers. So we have our little development team there. What sort of things are they interested in? Well, you know, for the artists, we sort of have the aesthetic side of things. So we want the story and the narrative design. We want to know about the visual design. We want to know about the sound design, etc. And the coders, the programmers, well, the game mechanics, they definitely want to know about the game mechanics, the gameplay, win-loss state, player progression, all this sort of stuff. So we need to give our development team something they can build. So if we go to them, if we go to our development team with this amazing vision, this amazing idea for a game, you know, we may even use the categories we've got to describe them. So we might be talking about our emotional experience. Yeah, it's fantastic horror games. So we want fear and what have you. We want the mental state of like heightened awareness, the meaning, and we've got a story there. We've got some social interaction, perhaps, or maybe not. That one doesn't have to be there. It's not multiplayer. And, you know, time and space, maybe this takes place in an L-shaped corridor at night in some really scary house or something. And you say to your development team, hey, I've got all this fantastic idea, this fantastic vision. I know it's guaranteed you're going to succeed. And you go to your development team and say, hey, build me this experience. Your development team's like, what? We can't build that. We can't, you know, you go to your programmers and say, hey, you know, create me a fearful experience. Your programmers are going to turn around and say, we don't know what you're talking about. We can't do that. Your development team, that's not their job. The development team can't do that. So the development team needs explicit direction in telling them what needs to be built. Now, it's not to say the development team is not going to provide any creative input. That can certainly still happen. But at the same time, if you have your creative vision, you need to lead the team. You need to give them enough information so that they can fill in, you know, they can actually help you with your creative vision. So you need explicit direction in telling your development team what actually needs to be built so that they can do their job. So we think here we've got the player experience as sort of an overall thing. The player getting their player experience playing the game. You can see down here we have our emotion, mind, mental state, meaningfulness, social interaction, and time and space. And on the other side, the development team actually needs to build this thing so the player can actually have that experience. Now, so the player experience is there. We've got our little player experience. We have our designer. So the designer, another job for the designer is that the designer has to take the vision that they've got, the vision in terms of player experience. So, you know, the player is going to have this particular experience, and actually translate that to a language that the development team can actually understand to develop the game that they're talking about. So the game designer's job, number one, designing engaging player experiences, and number two, translating the design into a formal language the development team can actually build. So there's kind of I'm saying there's two major things for a game designer there. The problem currently, and this really is a problem. This is really a serious issue right at the moment in game design. There is no common language for designers to communicate their designs to the development team when it comes to game design, game development. This means that if you say you're working for a particular studio, maybe a small studio, maybe an indie studio, maybe a medium-sized studio, even maybe one of the larger studios, You go and change jobs. There's no common language there. And when I talk about language, I'm not talking about, just like English or something. Language, we're talking about design languages. So design languages can be made up of multiple different aspects. There can be visual elements of it. There can be written elements of it. There can be conceptual elements of a language for game design. Think about architecture, the different tools that an architect may have. CAD tools, blueprints, engineering information, etc., etc. So there's a lot of stuff there. One I didn't mention is one of my favorites, game design or design patterns. Again, coming from architecture. So there are all these tools, that can potentially form a language for game design. At the moment, there is no common language, no common understood language. So, if you're an architect, you go to architecture school, you should be able to go to any architecture firm and be able to sort of step in there and be talking a common language, being able to understand what other designers are talking about, understanding what your engineers, what your builders need to actually get the job done. We don't have that in game design, and it's a serious issue. We don't have it. So my plan really is to introduce a solution to the problem. This is something I've been working on for a long time, for around 10 years. I might tell a story about how I sort of came to this. It's actually through a story of failure. I actually failed big time in some game development stuff, and I sat back and thought, really looked closely. It's amazing. Serious failure can really make you look very closely at what the hell is going on. And I realized, like, hang on, we don't have all this stuff here. So I spent 10 years, been doing a PhD, haven't finished it yet, but well, here I am anyway. But through that, I've actually developed what I would describe as a common language for designers to communicate their designs to the development team. So essentially, that's what I'm trying to do with this selection, with this set of videos that I'm putting forward. And hopefully this will provide a solution that people can use. I mean, I want this to be a practical solution to the problem of communicating with designers. Designers communicating with development team. There's also some tools in there to, assist actually in the design process, because in fact we don't even have a common way to think about games. You know what? When we're sort of thinking about games, and this is different to what I was talking about before. When we think about games, what they're made up of, their components, how you might change things around. If you want to take an existing game, understand how it's made up, and then maybe change things around a little bit to create a somewhat different game, or combine different elements from different games. We don't even have a way to think about games that easily allows us to do that. So I think in many ways we are hamstrung as game designers. So I'm really hoping to be able to provide at least the beginning of a solution to this. I mean, this is at least maybe one tool or one set of tools that game designers can use. If this is something you're interested in, please like the video, as they always say on YouTube videos. Subscribe to the channel, that definitely helps. I'm planning to release videos regularly, planning to sort of go into a lot of depth around this this topic. Also doing some conversations in game design, a little bit lighter type stuff, looking at existing games, particularly maybe classic games out there, and talking about them from a design point of view. So obviously this is for game designers, this is for people who are interested in game design, and really helping game designers make better games, and increasing the quality, reducing the time, believe it or not, reducing the time to development. There's a lot we can go in here about how to do that. As I said, this is something I've been developing for around 10 years. I think it's not quite 10 years, but around 10 years. And I think there's a lot that can be gained from this stuff. So please like the video again and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully I will see you in future videos. Cheers.